What's up, everybody? I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic. How's everybody doing? You guys sound like a dry chair. How you doing? Yeah. Gotta let things rock and roll a little bit. We're all sober. I'm serious.
Hell yeah.
Yes, Steve. All right, let's pray. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right, folks, we're on the 8th step tonight. How's everyone doing with what we've done so far? Everybody staying current? Anybody not done with their 4th step? Keep it real. It's okay. Don't raise your hand. Let me see. Okay. Couple people. That's okay. Stay current. We're glad you're here. It's tough when you get a little behind and you got kids and life shows up and it's hard making time to do that. So we're glad you're here. We use the time that you have here, the hour or so or whatever, to use it to do some writing. You'll still be able to hear me. I don't know if I'm going to have something profound to say or not, but you writing that inventory is definitely profound. So use the time if you can. If you have your stuff with you, I would encourage you to do that. Brandon's over there doing it. I can see him now. Good job, Brandon. One announcement. I want to make an announcement that tomorrow night at the Primary Purpose Group 12 and 12, it's our 1-year anniversary. If you've never been to that meeting, it's a little bit more of an intimate meeting, but we do a study on the 12 and 12 like we do here on Thursday nights. And so it's very powerful in that sense. And our very own Dave Yoder, right over there, and his wife will be doing the AA Al-Anon talk. Woo! Doors open at 5:30. We'll have dinner at 6. And him and his wife will go on up at 7 to do a AA and an Al-Anon lead. So it'll be something you don't want to miss, I promise you. The other thing is the conference in March. The registration for the hotel, the discount ends on March 7th. So if you don't know about that or you want some more information, see one of the Primary Purpose Group people will get you the flyer. You save about $100 if you register before the 7th, if you want to stay there. What else? There's something else? Go ahead, buddy.
I almost say pre-registration started yesterday. So if you haven't pre-registered yet, go ahead and do so. You can do that online. I can get this thing open here. But you can do it either at the internet office or you can go to Father's Day .org. It's at the bottom. If you don't get yourself pre-registered, you'll be kicking yourself later. Trust me on this.
Thanks, Chris.
The meeting on the river opened up too.
Oh, nice. What you got, dear?
Yeah, Mickey Alcoholic. The Akron Multi-District is having a service panel, the Winter Spring service panel at Pilgrim Church. Doors open at 12:30. 12:30. Doors open at 12:30.
Thanks.
There's a flyer that should be going around. I forgot it because I suck. But I'm sharing it, so come hear some stuff about service at different levels and get some chicken pizza.
Sweet. Thank you, guys. So, got some announcements. If you need any more information about any of those, wait, we got more. Yes, sir.
What you were talking about initially, tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, yep. It's down on 2106 4th Street. 2106 4th Street in Cuyahoga Falls. It's called the... Yes. Doors open at 5:30. Eat at 6. Dave and his wife will be doing the talk at 7. Got it? Yeah. Don't want to miss that. Okay, we got any more? Okay, cool. All right, so we've been trudging along here. We'll probably do the tradition first just to kind of get out of the way so I don't run out of time at the end like I always do. But by this time in your sobriety, last week was, I think it's been very special when we all get to, and our group is cut in half probably. When you guys say something like that, it's been, and that's okay. But going to the chapel with everybody and doing our third step together it's a little overwhelming. It's very special. And then last week I know a few people did their fifth steps on that same day. And to go to the chapel and take your seventh step with a group of people like that is very, very powerful. And to see how, not maybe you've never heard that before, or maybe you've never done that before, to see that's kind of how we do it and to experience that with a group of people is pretty amazing. So I'm very encouraged by that. By this time in this workshop, if you've been staying current with the work, maybe you're having a brand new experience because you never heard of some of these things before. A lot of people, especially with the first step, they were like, I never heard that before. I've been saying I was powerless because of my outside circumstances. Usually that's the most profound thing. The other kind of profound thing that we discussed in this workshop was that third column of the fourth step. And a lot of people were like a little bit confused about that. Also, the sex and conduct. And so instead of just focusing on sex, we also focused on the conduct, which is very thorough. It helps us to see. And so if you've been staying current with all the work, you learn why you're powerless. It has nothing to do with your outside circumstances, has nothing to do with your willpower, or your character, or what side of town you grew up on, or your race, or your weight, or anything else like that. It's just simply we're powerless because we have physical allergy, a mental obsession, and a spiritual malady. Aaron, get your boy, man. Yes, sir. Yeah.
For this amends part, man, I was wondering exactly how do you do that in regards of like, my higher power and then relationships. That's the one I had on there. Like that's the main one I want to know. Like,
how do you make amends?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight.
All right.
But if you want to get a little bit more deep, like a specific, we can talk after the meeting. Or, yeah. So your second step, a lot of people, we talked about that in here too. A lot of people had some things to say about that. A lot of times the trending, more popular, traditional thing that you're going to hear in Alcoholics Anonymous is all you got to do is be willing to believe. And a lot of times your sponsors or somebody will ask you, are you willing to believe? And you'll say, yeah, because you know how to say the right answer, because we all do. And then we go on to step 3 and we miss a lot. And so hopefully and I've heard some of you guys have made comments to me, you've had pretty cool experiences with writing down the things you believe, the things you don't believe, and all your prejudices. And a lot of times, all of us, because we're so arrogant and selfish, we never, ever considered our own conception. And what we've done instead, for the most part, is we believed what everybody else told us to believe. And there's not a single thing wrong with that, except it just lacks a little bit of intimacy. It lacks a little bit of depth. And so when I'm able to be honest with God about the things I believe about Him that are good, and a lot of them are bad, some of them, and things I don't believe about God, which some of the things I don't believe about God, like I don't believe God's punishing. But sometimes I believe that God is far away, maybe. And so some of the things, they're going to be good, and some of them things are going to be bad. And when I'm able to practice that step as a way of life on a daily basis, meaning when I wake up and I pray my prayers and I'm going through my day and stuff is coming up, usually stuff is coming up or I get real afraid, because if you track any fear back, it's going to be a fear of there is no God. Because when I'm close to the fire and when I'm close to God and I have an intimate relationship with the Creator, then I feel secure and I feel whole. I know that He's going to take care of me. I can sense His power and love, and I know and I have a security in that. It's supernatural, and it's like the big book says, it's a vital sixth sense. But when I get away from that, then naturally, without even trying, I'm going to start to manage again. Because I got to take control of, I can't figure out where the bill money's coming from. I got to get my butt into a relationship because I'm lonely. All these different, I get real desperate and weird. You know what I mean? I've done those things sober. When I am away from the Creator, then I have to manage everything in my life. And when I do that, I just make a mess. I just make a big old mess. And so we went to the third step and we talked about how selfish and how self-centered we are. And we talk about this selfishness and self-centeredness
And I think a lot of times what we do is we talk about that selfishness and self-centeredness as if we got a grasp on it. Like it's visible, or it's right here right now and I can grab hold to it. But the selfishness and self-centeredness in regards to alcoholism is way more cunning, baffling, and powerful than that. At any given time, at any given day, in any kind of spiritual condition, I can revert back to my selfishness and self-centeredness without even knowing I'm doing it. And 99% of the time, that's exactly what's going to happen. If I was just so profound in the spiritual life that I was just able to see my selfishness all the time, that'd be wonderful. But it's just not my experience. And my experience is that I am very selfish and I am very self-centered, and without God's help, I'm going to behave and react out of selfishness. I'm gonna be selfish of those in my family, selfish of my peers, selfish at work, be inconsiderate. I'm going to behave that way. It's more normal for me to behave selfishly at depth than it is for me to be unselfish and thoughtful and considerate of others. Once again, that obviously is in direct proportion to my spiritual condition. When I have a security, when I have a closeness to the Creator, I have a feeling or an assurance that God's going to take care of all my needs. He's going to take care of this need and that need, and so I'm able to go about life and be thoughtful. Remember when we come up from that third step, what was said and what we say, all the guys say, is you're not your own business anymore. Now, all the things that you worry about and all the ways you got to take care of yourself and all the things you got to manage, you don't have to do it no more because God's going to do it for you. Now, as a result of the decision that you made and the witnesses that seen you do it, you have the opportunity and the privilege to be thoughtful of other people and to work the rest of the steps. It's quite a miracle. And also, once again, it's a daily practical application of that third step, which really comes to play. And a lot of times, we do abuse the third step. We got stuff going on in life. Problems are surmounting. We think we could just go take a third step and everything will be all right without taking any personal responsibility. And what we do learn right after the third step is next we launched on a course of vigorous action, right? This is a result of a third step. We go back through our lives. Big Book says nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. And we take a look at almost every area of our life through these columns: resentment, fear, sex, and conduct. And somehow those 4 areas cover every single thing in my whole life. I heard a guy lead last night and he talked about doing a 4th step but not being thorough on it. And he said he didn't get nothing from it. It didn't do nothing. Big Book says that. The Big Book says nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. And so I want to encourage you, the courage it takes to kind of write a 4th step in that way and to be able to 5th step it with somebody. It's very courageous because we all come from a place where we all understand the quote, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We all understand that. When somebody says that, we know it. And so consequently what happens is that means we carry secrets and we carry shame and we carry guilt and so forth and so on. And the Big Book says nothing worthwhile in life can happen until we tell our whole life story to somebody. Our whole life story. We don't keep out what we did. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But that's not true for us. We won't make it. Our sobriety or our life and our spiritual condition literally relies on our ability to be honest and open in that way. Fearlessness and humility is what the Big Book would say. That's what we learn in that process. And so we do our 5th steps with all these new things, especially what was big time in this 4th step for us in this workshop was that 3rd column in the resentment inventory. Some people had a little bit of problem of how did I set the ball rolling in the fear inventory? But we learned about that. We did that together. And then a lot of people were surprised by the sex and conduct not just being imprisoned by sex, but also looking at my conduct, which is, like we talked about, can seem very daunting. To write down every area of my life where I've ever been selfish, inconsiderate, dishonest, so forth and so on. But everybody's done it. And it's not daunting and it's very liberating. And then we talked about the 6th step, and this time we talked about 6 and 7 last week, which I thought went very well. But the 6th step is willingness. And how do we become willing? So if willingness is the key of the 6th step, and I got to be willing to allow God to remove the things, well, how do I get that willingness? Well, if you want to jump start, like the coffee pot takes forever, and we got to jump start the coffee pot, we pour coffee back through it, right? And we're trying to hurry it up. And so if you don't want to wait for a life to happen as a result of a consequence of your character defects that you know that you have, we know we got them. And so sometimes we'll push them down deep inside ourselves because that's what we're used to doing. That's what we've been doing our whole life. And so that's what we're going to do here now. And so if you want to jumpstart that process, you can look at a couple of things. You can look at however this behavior or sin or defective character or however you want to term it, how is it affecting me? How is it affecting those I love? And if you got a double negative there, it helps you, it creates a willingness, right? A willingness that we can go to God with and say, please take this from me, right? Please. It's one thing to be sober, folks. We all know everybody in here is sober. I don't know anybody who's damn brand new in here, but we all know what it's like to be sober and miserable. We know what it's like to get away from the program a little bit and get real crusty and real dry. And so how do we keep that from happening? This 6 and 7 is going to be big deal. And so we keep that 6 and 7 alive. In the 12 and 12, the 6th step opens up with, this is the step which separates the men from the boys. And it says that for a reason, because it's very hard. But it creates a place in our lives if I'm constantly looking for defects of character. I may like the damn defect of character. I don't want to never let it go. But if it's hurting you and it's hurting me, and out of out of me saying, oh, I hate that it hurts Rachel. I hate that it hurts my buddies. And I see how it's hurting me, but I love it, right? But by me looking at those two relationships, I literally can gain enough willingness to take it through the rest of the process, which is very powerful. And so consequently, what happens is that not only am I sober, but I'm happy, joyous, and free as well. The 12 and 12 says some profound things we read a couple weeks ago, is that alcoholics, we always choose comfort over character building. We're gluttonous for comfort and gluttonous for pleasure. And we think character building is going to come like comfort, and it's not. You see, it's just not coming the same way where we're just laying on the couch waiting for the character to come. It's not. And so to some degree, this is a program of action, and you're going to have to take actions to that. And so we kind of look at some of these angles and some ways to make it a little bit easier for us to take these things. And so the 6 and 7 step are very, very rarely even talked about. At any given time, at any given means, you're going to hear about them by all means. And a lot of times, another thing that happens is 6 and 7 is jumbled up into one step like it's one thing, and it's not. The 6 will lead to a 7. And it's vitally important that if you are sober for any length of time, that you understand that so that you can practice it. And so if you want to be effective in being a parent, and you want to be effective at work, and you want to be effective raising your children, and you want to be an effective friend and a good friend, you want to have good relationships, you better my suggestion is to continue to look at 6 and 7, because I don't care how long you're sober, I've been gotten so crazy sober. I think I went to the psych ward when I was 4 years sober. 4 or 5 years sober, maybe. And I've done some crazy things sober, you know what I mean? And as a result of not doing some of those things. Step 8 and 9 are going to be the same thing. You're going to get where those two steps are jumbled up like they're one step, and they're not. They're just simply not one step, they're 2 steps. Step 8 and step 9. If it was the case that 6 and 7 was one step, it'd just be one step. And 8 and 9 was one step, that'd be one step. Same thing with 10 and 11. They get mixed up and they act like they're just one step, and they're not. And so maybe you can get away with kind of doing that, and that's okay. If you're able to get away with it and you're happy, joyous, and free, and your life is successful and your relationships are worthwhile, bop till you drop. I mean it. That's fine with me. And I don't want to be controversial by all means, but for some of us alcoholics, and I give you an example. Me and Aaron were talking this week. I keep saying it because it's so funny. But I get all excited about different things in AA, and I was talking to Aaron. He's like, Mike, man, do you know there's only 7 days in the week? And I was like, yeah, you're right, man. But some people are not, like, if you think about alcoholism, I've heard it said like this before, some alcoholics would go to the bar and sit at the damn bar, like Cheers, like Norm, right? They'd go to the bar seat like Norm, and they go get the bartender already knows what they want, and Norm will sit at the bar until closing time. Norm will go on home. Norm will go to work the next day. Norm will get off of work. Norm will go back to the bar, sit in the same damn seat and get the same damn thing. Some alcoholic, if you did that in your drinking, you're probably gonna do that in your sobriety. Some alcoholics are gonna go to be like Norm. They're gonna go sit in that chair, get them a couple drinks, and they're gonna be playing pool, putting money in the jukebox, acting a fool a little bit, but they're gonna behave a little bit more. There's gonna be more needed for them to get that emptiness filled. They're gonna have to do more. And that's okay. And if you did that in your alcoholism, your drinking career, then you're gonna do that in your sobriety. Then there's these other people, and I've heard them talked about, and they've been called mad dogs. You can call yourself Norm all you want to, but your real name ain't Norm, it's George. You go to the bar, you get a drink, you put some money in the jukebox, you stole a couple dollars off the bar, and then you're out of there on to the mission. Right? And some alcoholics are just like that. They're not ever going to be content in their drinking, just sitting at a bar, just sitting at that same place. Once they get that drink in them, they're gone, and who the hell knows what's going to happen. And if you are like that in your drinking, you need to be like that with your sobriety, because probably nothing else will do. Nothing else will make you happy. You won't find that peace. And consequently, if you're an alcoholic like that, and I've been talking to Dave a lot lately because he's the mad dog. I'm not, he is. I'm just kidding. But we relate to that where we wasn't able to sit still. Like once I got a drink in me, and I know all the guys, almost everyone I sponsor is the same way. Crazy. Can't just go to the bar. Not one of the guys I sponsor, I think, could say, yeah, I just would go to the bar every night. None of them. And so consequently, in an Alcoholics Anonymous atmosphere, in any community across America, the more majority of the people in attendance at Alcoholics Anonymous are going to be the people who, they're going to be amazing stories, and not to be controversial, but the more majority, the bigger voices of the people that were like Norm. And so to some degree, we represent here a sobriety for the underdog. A sobriety for people to have a fellowship and to have an understanding and a camaraderie of, I'm not like Norm. I'm an alcoholic like Norm, but I couldn't sit at that damn bar every day like Norm. My ass went out into the world, ended up in jail and this and that, and over at the dope house, and then picked her up and then him up, and then we ended up in North Carolina, and all these crazy different things happen. And so to some degree, I believe in my experience in my 16 years of sobriety is that those alcoholics, which we would call mad dogs, their voice ain't heard as much. And the reason why I believe that is because if you're already alcoholic, you're very self-centered, you're like an ingrown hair, and everybody else's experiences is sitting at that bar, you already think that there's something innately wrong with you. And I want you to know, and I promise you, and I always let you know, that I'm for them folks. I'm for everybody getting sober. But the people that couldn't just sit at the bar, went out there and went crazy and came to Alcoholics Anonymous and didn't find the fellowship that they craved, they didn't find a camaraderie that made it come alive for them, this is where you'll find it here. And then doing this work and then coming to these meetings and so forth and on. And here's the thing about that. Because if you're an alcoholic like that in that way, you will be responsible to carry that message to other people that's just like you. Because left to your own devices, just like me, 2, 3, 4 years sober, 2 years sober, wondering, what is wrong with me? I'm sober. My life is better than it's ever been. But there's got to be more to this. Hey, you guys want to go to the juvenile prison? Nah, man. Why not? I just found free gold. I got to go give it to the kids. You don't want to go? Why not? You want to go? No. What's wrong with me? How's come I'm all excited about this? And so Aaron, his little term is there's levels to this shit. That's how he says it. and he's right. And so if you're that mad dog alcoholic, you're not going to be content doing what everybody else is going to do. And you're going to hear people say stuff to you, and you're going to ask yourself questions like, hey, do you know there's only 7 days in the week? Because we're going to need more, you see? And you're going to have to dig into these steps in a way that makes a program come to life for you. It's got to. If I'm going to be sober and miserable, then I'm not going to be sober for long. You see? I'm just a fact. And so in my 16 years of sobriety, I've seen a lot of people go back out and come back in and go back out and come back in. And sometimes they never hear that message. They never hear, hey, you might not get away with doing what everybody else is doing. It might not work for you. Or they might hear that and then they take them 5 more years to come ask me, what did you mean by that? I have that a lot. A lot of guys I sponsor will all tell you that that's exactly what that was for them. And so that will come to life, you see? And so we want you to be happy, joyous, and free. We want you to have a place in the community of Alcoholics Anonymous where you can have brand new ideas and you could be driven and get intuitions and have a way to share messages to people that normally ain't getting it. We want you to be able to carry that message and come up with conferences and big book things and workshops and all the different cool things we get to be a part of and getting to see people recover from hopelessness. And there's some people in Alcoholics Anonymous who are mad dogs and are sitting at a meeting tonight and they're bored out of their mind and wondering what the hell is wrong with them. And I'm here to tell you there ain't not a damn single thing wrong with them. They just need more of this. And they need to be around other people who know what that's like. You see? And so we create that here. That's what we're doing. And so, but like I said, we all are responsible for that. You ladies got it. Fellas looking around the room. The ladies, you guys got it worse than us. I'm going to be honest. It's just the girls are different. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I've never been one. So we might have to talk to Clay about that or something. I don't know. But your girls, man, I mean it. You guys know, we all know, and it's easy to see. The girls got it a little bit tougher. They got a little bit tougher in fellowship. They got a little bit tougher in camaraderie. They got a little bit tougher in who do they turn to? Well, I got people I can turn to. They're not everybody I can turn to. Any alcoholic I can turn to at any given time. But some people really get it. And that number becomes very small. And then you have a population of you women it's very difficult for you guys to find that. I know it is. I've seen it. I'm married to an alcoholic. I've seen women in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I feel bad because you don't have the same opportunities I think that we do. And so sometimes women get mad about that and they call Alcoholics Anonymous the good old boys program. And that's not the truth. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a good old boys program. One of you damn women's gonna have to step it up. Somebody's gonna have to be inspired and get some intuitive thought, and I mean that from my heart. I'm not saying it in a bad way. Not that none of you aren't already doing that, but it's gonna just take a few women just to create a place for so many other women to recover and be happy, joyous, and free. And I want you to know, you come to these workshops, you are responsible for that. And maybe some of you have already been thinking about it. Some of it's already on your heart. You women need it. There's women and teenage girls and, they need you. They need to create a place like that for you guys, because I promise you girls are just different. And sometimes a girl going to come into the meeting and they're not going to feel that fellowship with other women. I don't know. You guys are just different. You guys got to create that. I don't know. I don't want to get saying no weird stuff I'm going to get in trouble for. But you got to have it. Me and the guys, if I ball up this paper right here and throw it across the room and it goes in the damn basket, we're going to be buds forever. But if a girl does that, they're going to be like, oh, she thinks she's the shit. No. Right? And so there's something going on there. I'm not going to act like I understand because I don't. But I'm telling you the need for women in Alcoholics Anonymous and the need for women to step up and go all in is beyond what I could think or dream or imagine. I've been seeing it since I first got sober. I promise you. And so I encourage you to grab a hold of it, to go back to your home groups or wherever you go and get busy. Get you a workshop going. Get you a women's check-in meeting going. You know what I mean? Do those things because Alcoholics Anonymous needs you. It needs all of us, but you women, I really want to charge you with that. I mean that. We love having you here, and I just hope that you can, we see them come and go. They come and go. Okay, I'm not going to go into much more of that. All right, Tradition 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. We define professionalism as the occupation of counseling alcoholics for fees or higher. But we may employ alcoholics where they are going to perform those services for which we shall otherwise have to engage non-alcoholics. Such special services may be well recompensed. But our usual AA 12-step work is never to be paid for. I went to a juvenile prison when I was about 2 years sober. Someone asked me to go down there and do a talk. It was in Mansfield. And it was a 2-story kind of a juvenile prison. And I went down, I talked to the first floor kids, and I was excited to be there and honored to be there. And I was pretty new sober and close to the fire. And then when I was getting ready to leave, they wrote me a check. And I wanted to take the check, I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to keep it real. It was like for $120 or something. I was like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, no, we don't do that. You know what I mean? We don't get paid for this. And then they're like, no, go ahead. I was like, nah, this is AA. We don't, this is what we do. Consequently, as a result of that, their very next statement was, can you come back next week and talk to the second floor? And right? And so they didn't offer me any money, but as practicing a spiritual principle and Alcoholics Anonymous in that way, maybe they started calling me. I gave them my number, and they'd go to their counselor's office, and they'd call me, Mike, what's going on? You said I could call you, blah, blah, blah. And then one day I got a call from one of the counselors at the juvenile prison, and the counselor said, Mike, we got this kid down here. His mom says he's going to come visit him every week, and every Sunday he looks out the window and waits for his mom to come, and she never shows up. Would you come and visit this kid? Absolutely. And so I went down there and I brought my big books, and I had a guy across from me, and I bought him some M&Ms or some Skittles or some shit from the vending machine. But then as a couple weeks went by, I had a whole table of kids that had the same exact thing happening, and we read the big book together. Very, very powerful. Then they said, Mike, will you do AA? AA in Mansfield, I know this on tape, I don't want to hate on the Mansfield AAs, but the people who were in Mansfield taking the meetings too, oh good, it fell out. Look at that. True.
Mess and stuff.
That was a God shot.
There you go.
The Mansfield folks have been sneaking the kids cigarettes. The AAs in Mansfield was sneaking the kids cigarettes and stuff. And so they kicked them out. And they gave AA a bad name. And so just on the humbug, we got to be a part of starting AA back in Mansfield again. So we have, if anybody goes to our intergroup office, we have people there who work there, and they work full time. You can't expect a volunteer to work full time, be there on time every day, 9 to 5. That's too much. People have lives and things and bills. It's not free to live in this world. So they should be recompensed, right? And so there's a tricky little place where you start getting into peer support, recovery coach, all these different new things that are going on. The government's threw tons and tons of money into the recovery thing, which is awesome. And so now we have an access to recovery like we've never had before. You can get kicked out of a treatment center right now, and 2 hours later be in another one. And so access to recovery is very well. But so a lot of times what we see is, I think I even looked online this week, it's a government thing, and in our state of Ohio website, in order to be a peer supporter or recovery coach, I don't know, you gotta have previous issues with drugs and alcohol. That was one of the prerequisites that I saw. And so, which is fine, but when you do that, we're not to be, and so sometimes you see new people sober working at the treatment centers. And now they're getting paid. They're making an hourly wage. And their job is not to do 12-step work. Their job is to be a residential supervisor or whatever the hell it is, and that's what you're to do. And so when we start crossing that line and I start 12-stepping, now there's certainly circumstances warrant for different things by all means. But when I start getting paid for 12-step work, it gets weird. It makes it very weird. It takes the spirit off of it, you see? And so we do this for free. Why? Because doing it for free is more powerful, you see? When I did a little talk down in Orlando, Florida, a little couple conferences down there. I was down there doing a talk, and they took me to a couple of the meetings down there, and they had said, we got AA police. And I started laughing because I just thought they was making a joke. Because you heard about AA police, the guys who want to make the meetings all perfect and shit up here. But down there, they literally had AA police where there's such a treatment industry going on down there. And they would have these people from these treatment industries coming to the meetings and try to find new people to sell them step work. And if you're a new person, you don't know no better, you're like, hey, I'll take you to the steps, $100 a step. And so that each group down there, which is whatever, that's their hustle, I guess. Each group down there would assign somebody, an AA police, and if they seen a new guy who kind of had it together a little bit, they'd watch him. And then if they'd see him talking to the new guy, they'd just make themselves present so that wouldn't be the message. And so we do this for free, folks. You know, I mean, what if it costs, well, I would have never been able to be sober if each step cost $100. Shit, I couldn't even afford a toothbrush, let alone the first step, you know what I mean? No way. I got through step 1, that was great, but where am I gonna get this $100 for step 2? You know what I mean? And so it's very spiritual. It makes it steep. Yeah. And it's inflation. It would be more expensive by now, probably more than $100. It's very spiritual that we do this for free for each other. You know what I mean? What do we ask of you? Put $1 in a basket. But a lot of times when you put $1 or $2 in a basket, you do that out of sense of belonging. And you do it out of, I know the coffee ain't free. And I understand why we do it now. You know what I mean? So that's step 8. Any questions about tradition 8? Any questions? Okay. Step 8, we're on a roll. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to all of them. So step 8 and step 9 are different. Step 8 is made a list of all persons we had harmed. And then consequently, what happens in making a list of all persons you had harmed, consequently what happens is that you become willing to make amends to them all. And so what I found, and so step 8 literally is just simply going back through and making a list. And a lot of times people will say, well, is it just confined to my 4-step inventory? No, it's absolutely not confined to your 4-step inventory. Obviously, you've made a list in your 4-step inventory, but if you look back through your life, made a list of all persons we had harmed. It don't say only the people that came up on your 4-step, it says all. And so there's where our personalities and our selfishnesses and all these different things come into play, because maybe you're still resentful at them and you're not putting them on the list. Right? And so this step really is about relationships and forgiveness. You see? And so making a list of all persons you had harmed. And so what's happened lately is we've been I usually have my guys write down on index cards. Just make a list first and then put them on index cards, and then they do piles. I'll do this amends right now. I don't know about these. I ain't never doing these ones. Just to kind of get a little bit of order and a little bit of structure. When it comes to, I believe in my opinion and my experiences is that the 4-step can be very, I don't know if it's necessarily scary, but I think we're just so lazy and slothful that sometimes we just don't do it. But I think the 8th step or the 9th step, I think those are scary. I think a lot of people are very afraid of those steps. It's humbling, you see? And so I'm going to go through the 12 and 12 with a couple things, and we're going to have a little dialogue on this. It says, this is a very large order. It is a task which we may perform with increasing skill, but never really finish. And so step 8, I've never heard of anybody who has made all their amends and relapsed. Have you? I made all my amends, every one of them, even the ones I got going on now, and relapse. So I've never heard of that, so there's something to think about. And so the way that step 8 made a list of all persons not harmed, there's different things that we can talk about with that. And it's like the little subtle sins or the subtle defects of character. And so if you ask yourself stuff like, do you keep your promises? You don't have to answer unless you feel so compelled. Like, you just got to get it off your chest or you're going to burn up today. By all means, tell on it. But think about that. And I'll go through this list, and I want you to think about these things, okay? These are a little bit more subtle step 8 things that we need to consider when we're making a list of all persons, because every one of these will harm others. Do you not keep your promises? And if you think about that, how do you feel when people don't keep their promises to you? You feel let down? And I'm not going to go through everyone like that. It just takes too much time. What about gossip? Who in here is not guilty of gossip? I'm glad, because I was going to get you. How about being on time? What's the saying? If you're not early, you're late. Not talking about you, Jan. Jan's never late. I've just seen her come just for today. So Just want to make sure everybody knows that. I've never seen Jan late ever once. So, but how about you? And are you showing up to your appointments or to the people you're supposed to meet somebody? You're going to a movie, you're going to a show, you're going to work, whatever. Are you showing up on time? Are you early? What about in your relationships? Are you unattentive? Are you attentive to your relationships, your friendships, your intimate relationships, your parents, your children? Are you unattentive? Sometimes life can be big and it's hard for us to just kind of dial in. So think about that. These are like the little subtle ones. And I put cruel speech. Cruel speech. Are you guilty of cruel speech? What about inappropriate speech? Like talking about freaky, sexy stuff and stuff like that. The guys, we get together and it gets weird real quick. I'm just being honest. And I know it for sure, right? I know it's just what, I don't know what you girls do. I ain't been around a bunch of you in a way that you felt so comfortable to do that. But if you're having, but if you're talking freaky, weird, crazy, and I've heard some crazy stuff, like, you know what I mean, just insane, shocking things. But think about that. We're living a spiritual life. The big book says the spiritual life, it says it in the amends. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Is you talking about, I'm not going to stop. Think about it. What about having grace for other people? Do you have grace? If you were to think about the amount of grace that you used up and didn't even pay attention to, and then you're aware of the grace that you're able to be aware of, are you extending grace to others? Or are you judgmental? I know alcoholics are the most judgmental people in the world. I could be with 5 guys fishing all day long and we get along great. Let me get home and get settled in, and 3 hours later, I'm like, I wonder why he said that for. You know, my mind just gets to going. You see? So are you graceful of others? Are you extending grace? Are you thinking about how much grace it took for you just to get here? Are you uninclusive? We all know what it feels like to be not included. Everybody in here. The 12 and 12 said one of our basic human desires is to be a part of. We want to feel included. Are you inclusive? Are you unselfish enough to be thoughtful of how is it going to make them feel if I forget to invite them? It's hard sometimes, I know. But are you inclusive? Are you flirty? Flirty can be weird. Flirty can be fun. It's like you're pushing a bar on, something that you know you're not supposed to do, but it's cheap thrill. If you're in a relationship, even if you're not in relationships, flirting, are you too flirty? Making yourself too available. When you make yourself too available and you're too flirty, you seem desperate. That's what I did. And when I'm too desperate, then guess what? I attract crazy. Crazy. You see? I mean it. And there's a price to be paid when you get yourself involved with crazy. It hurts. Are you ungrateful? Are you really grateful for the things you have in your life? If you think about, I think I was just talking to, I think it was Dave actually, that if it's raining outside like it has been a couple last days and you were driving down the road, what if your windshield wipers didn't work? You know how hard it would be to drive without windshield wipers? It would be terrible. You'd have to stick your head out of the window or something. So are you thinking of those things that we ought to be grateful for that we take for granted? Toothpaste, toilet paper, hot water, electric, clean clothes, running water. Some of us got sober and wasn't not one of them things. And so are you being grateful for the things that you just take for granted? Are you controlling? Does everything have to be your way? You have to manage all your relationships and all your friendships and your family? And are you controlling everything and you're making it weird for others? Are you letting go? If you're powerless, if you have friends and you're friends with alcoholics, it can get weird. If the pool you're swimming in life is Alcoholics Anonymous, then consequently, the most people around you are going to be alcoholic. And at any given time, one of them alcoholics or two or all of you are going to get sick. And you're going to try to control things because it seems like the right thing to do. Are you able to say that I'm not only powerless over my alcoholism, but I'm powerless over theirs? And are you able to let go in a way which just allows people the freedom to do and be who they are and have the human dignity to face and deal with their own consequences and love them anyway? Respect them enough to make poor decisions. Are you worldly? Irresponsible? Are you constantly justifying things? Are you constantly, you know if you are or not. Are you skimping on work or chores at home? Are you skimping? Are you looking for corners to cut? And so the spiritual principle there would be to give your employer a dime for their nickel because God gives the increase. Are you skimping on that? A lot of times what I see for myself and for others is we skimp on work and expect something more to come, right? I don't know why I didn't get to raise. Well, your first hour of work you spent on the toilet. What did you think was going to happen? You want a raise. And so the big book, and in this amends, it says the spiritual life is not there. We have to live it. And so God's the employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed. We stay close to him and did his work well. And so I go to work and I give them a dime for the nickel and I let God give the increase. And maybe the increase may come through that job or maybe through another, but I trust that God is going to come through. I've seen it happen over and over. Are you impatient? Are you impatient with things that you want? Are you impatient with your friends? Are you impatient with your significant other? Are you impatient with your children, with your friends, with your sobriety? I don't care what way it is. Are you impatient? Do you procrastinate? Are you a procrastinator? Every one of these things that we're naming, they're a little bit more subtle and we overlook them because we're looking to go make a list of all the people we have harmed as a result of stealing their money or cussing them out or something just plain and like a big boom. But what about these little subtle things? Am I willing to make amends to the people I've hurt as a result of me behaving in these ways? Because I promise you, if we're all going to go eat after here and we're all to some degree family in here and I leave one of you out, it's going to hurt your feelings. If you leave me out, it's going to hurt my feelings. You see? Am I responsible for that? I think so. Nobody's perfect. You're never going to be perfect. This is just some things to consider. Do you blame? Are you a blamer? If I'm blaming other people, the victims never recover. That's a fact. And so if I have a situation in my life where I'm not able to move on because it's someone else's fault and I'm waiting for them to change for me to get better, I am in prison. I have placed way too much power in someone else's hands for me to get better. Victims never recover. And so any of these areas in my life where I feel that someone has harmed me or wronged me, it is my responsibility to overcome. And how I overcome is through these spiritual principles. I have a responsibility. If someone does something to me, there is a principle of forgiveness. The problem with the principle of forgiveness is I am a human being and I'm arrogant to the core, and I think that I'm going to be able to practice forgiveness in my human strength, and I'm not. Remember, the big book said many of us had philosophical convictions galore, but we couldn't live up to them. Remember, and then it goes on to say, lack of power is our dilemma. And so I don't believe in my experience that I'm supposed to live out spiritual principles in my human strength because it's futile. I'm supposed to allow God to demonstrate through me what he can do. And remember, we talked about that depth of powerlessness last week when it comes to them defects of character, because I'm not going to wish them or will them away. That's what I think I'm going to do. I got sober through alcohol. I got sober from alcohol and drugs. I worked the steps, and now all these other things, I'll just take care of them on my own. God, you can have my alcoholism, but you can't have my sex life. God, you can have my alcoholism, but don't tell me how to spend my money. God, you can have my alcoholism, but I still want to do this with these people and do this with those people. And talk about weird stuff with, whatever. Right? Are you showing appreciation to the people about you? Are you being pleasant? Are you pleasant? Are you an encouraging person? Do you encourage those about you? It's not very hard to be encouraging to people. The problem with being encouraging to people is we only think about ourselves. You know what I mean? And so are we able to set myself aside? Am I able to set myself aside and say, damn, Steve, that's a cool looking camo shirt, man. I like it. I don't really mean that, but. But for example, it's not a bad shirt. But am I, huh? Yeah, I'm just keeping it real, man. I'm just getting intimate up here. Are you able to be encouraging? Because I'm telling you, being encouraging to each other would profoundly increase the depth of your relationships. If we could all go about this week and just be encouraging to those that we come across, even the people that we get our cigarettes or Polar Pops or whatever the hell we're getting at the gas station, and say something encouraging to the clerk, boy, we're packing into the stream of life. You see? And so you pack into the stream of life, and what I believe about that, and we'll talk about that more, is I pack into the stream of life. It may not come right back to me, but that whatever I pack into the stream of life with that person will pack it in somewhere else. I'm not taking from the stream of life no more all the time. I'm trying to pack into it. Are you not looking for good in others on purpose? Think about that. If you spot it, you got it. And if you're a good alcoholic, you got a lot of it. And so you spot a lot of it. And we do that. We're already judgmental. We're already selfish. I'm an alcoholic. I'm flawed to the core. And if I got lots of flaws, and I'm going to see my flaws in you, and I'm going to be able to spot it. Am I able to switch that around a little bit and on purpose? Am I going to be able to choose some character building over my comfort and say, I'm going to try to look for the good in these people and in this person? That's a very important, the value in your personal relationships of doing the contrary to the things that we talked about here today would add, your relationships would be overwhelmingly fruitful. Remember in the second step, one of the bedevilments, we're having problems with personal relationships. And we dream big, and we dream the opposite of what that would be. And what's the opposite? I'm having trouble with personal relationships. My personal relationships would be awesome. I'd have great friendships that were very loyal, and I could trust people and so forth and so on. And I dream big on these. And if I practice these, I will get exactly that. That vision will 100% come true. But if I'm thinking about myself, and I'm a grumpy old crusty dude, and I got nothing bad to say, and I don't participate, and I'm not inclusive, and I'm not encouraging, and I don't have no concern or care, how do you think my relationships are going to be? They're going to have to be shallow. I'm going to have to get in with some other people that are shallow as me. And so if you don't tell me nothing about me, and I won't tell you about nothing about you, and we'll just be fake together and act like it's all good. And that happens. I promise you that happens. Any questions about that? Nothing? Go ahead. Corey B? I prayed about it. Yeah. My own life, my own personal experiences, what are things I think about for me, where I could be better. And because we all know how to make a list of the persons we've harmed, but let's take it to the next level. If I'm going to continue to grow in understanding effectiveness, not just with the 10th step, and if that statement is applicable for the rest of my life and it's very spiritual, well, how can I grow in understanding effectiveness with an 8th step that's very rarely even talked about? Well, let me look at some of these more subtle things that I fall short on. Dylan?
What about those people I harm that through harming them actually harm other people?
Say that one more time, buddy.
Like, I harmed my mother, but I didn't really do anything to my stepdad. But my stepdad stayed up late at night taking care of my mom and being there for her and my sister because of everything I did to her. So consequently, I harmed him. You know what I mean? So I didn't even think about that until I went through my stuff. It was like I inadvertently harmed him through harming my mother.
That's a great point. Dylan brought up a great point. And so what I tell my guys to do, and when they're making amends and they're making their list, is to look around the relationship. So obviously you hurt your mom. You just did a great job of describing it. But who's around mom? Grandkids, stepdad, dad, maybe grandma, cousin Bobby and them. Right? And so if you look around the relationship, right? If you look around it, you're going to naturally or consequently, you're going to uncover more amends. And so, like we say sometimes, if you take a thimble to the ocean, you get a thimble worth of water. How much God do you want? And so me finding God is not a quest of me going to fill up with God. It's literally a quest of me getting rid of me, right? And so if I look around these relationships and I end up, I just thought I owed amends to my mom, but next thing you know, I owe amends to Chico and them and Steve and Dan and Grandma or whatever. You see, and so here's the thing about it. If you don't look for that, or if you don't think about these little subtle things, I'm not a great artist, but here's your little heart. It's square on my picture. Let me make it real. There it is. Your heart or your spirit is going to be full of shame and guilt and remorse and horror. I know you can't read any of them rhymes because I just scribbled every one of them words. And if you just go make amends to your mom and you leave out Chico and them, you think it goes away? It don't go away, it's still there. And so we're such great stuffers. We learned it as a tool to survive in life. You cannot go about drinking and doing the things that we did and walk through life and be able to even smile without being able to be a master stuffer. And so we do it. We don't even know we do it. So it's vitally important to, when you got your amends list from your inventory, or you're just looking back through your life, whether they pissed you off or not, at least put him on the list. Putting him on the list consequently adds up to the willingness to do it. You see? And so, does that make sense? If I've done something to somebody else and they don't even know it, let's talk about that. And so you got two people. I hate that my illustrations suck, but if I've done something to Bob and Bob don't know, do you think me and Bob can have a great relationship? Who said yeah? Of course, it was Clay. That's not true. I love you, Clay. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. Here's what I know from my experience. I guarantee this. There was a buddy of mine, his name was Joe. And when we were kids, me and Joe was the best of buds. I mean, we'd sneak out together. We were just buds. We played athletics together. We did everything together. And we were young and we were wild and we were drinking and doing things that we weren't supposed to do. And we went to this party. And we went to this party where there was a bunch of older kids and teenage kids, and we thought we were cool. And so Joe got to acting stupid because he got drunk, and he was in the kitchen, and I was in the living room flirting with some girl. And I walked through the kitchen, and I could go up the stairs, and I looked in the kitchen, and Joe was getting beat up by a couple of them older dudes. And you know what I did? I just kept going up the stairs like a little bitch. And I say that because that's how I felt when I did that. Was I a little bitch? I don't know. Debatable. But when I started doing my amends, I prayed this prayer that I heard a guy say. Don't pray this unless you really mean it. God, please show me what my unfinished amends has to do with me taking a drink. I prayed that prayer for about a week, and all I could think about was Joe. Joe didn't even know I knew. And you know what separated me from Joe? My own shame, my own guilt, my own remorse, my own fear, and my horror put a wall between me and Joe that he didn't even know was there. I couldn't look Joe in the eye and feel good about myself or confident or even normal. Well, I got all that stuff in my heart. It was impossible. And so the idea of what you said, and I know you was probably playing, I hope you was, that what they don't know won't hurt them is not true. Maybe it won't hurt them, but it'll hurt me. And it'll hurt my relationships. So consequently, I had to call Joe up and say, Joe, how's it going, buddy? Oh, Mike, how you doing, man? I said, oh, you amends, man. Met him at the Dunkin' Donuts, and he said, you ain't gonna start talking to me about Jesus and all stuff, are you? I said, no, man, I'm not gonna do that. And I told him that when we was at the party, I seen what happened, and I didn't do nothing, and how I felt so terrible and so much of a coward for it. and that he was my friend, and it was wrong for me to do that. That's not who I am. It's not who I want to be, and it tear me up. For 30 years, I stuffed it inside myself and didn't even know it was there. And Joe was like, wow, man. And it made him tear in his eye. Next thing you know, what can I do to make it right, Joe? You know, what could I do? And he's like, nothing, just stay in touch. So me and Joe went fishing together, took him to the Maumee River. I won the hunting lottery. I know he was an outdoorsman, let him come on my hunting lottery with me. And so we still talk today. Our relationship has literally been restored. There's not a single way possible that me and Joe would be able to be friends today if I still had that in my heart. Not a single way. Impossible. So look around your relationships. Look for some of the ones that are hiding deep. Turn over the stones. Look through your life with a flashlight. Look in the corners. Look for these subtle things. You want your life to be full. Most people will respect the humility it takes to. Job respected it. I come and did it because he knew as a man that was hard to do. It wasn't easy for me to do. And it showed Job that I did care about him. And he meant something to me. You see? Victims never recover, folks. And so if you got stuff going on in your life, just like we talked about, where somebody else had done you wrong, and if you think, I know everybody in here, I guarantee, if you think about you can think about somebody you got some angst with right now. Everybody in here can probably think. Everybody in here can think about that person or those people or something like that. If you're waiting around, that's probably not going away. Fair? It's not going away. You'll get better at stuffing it, but it's not going to go away. And so I want you to put the people that you think that you have angst against, put them on your list because I guarantee that you owe them amends for something, and I don't know what. Mo?
Do you think that it would be wrong for them to include themselves on there?
No, but and so just in reading, so absolutely put yourself on your amends list. But I do believe this, that I come to forgive myself as I go out and make right the wrongs I did. And so here's what it has. Here's what I heard it said. I sold my soul to pay for the party. Now it's time for me to buy it back. Does that make sense? I sold my soul to pay for the party, right? That's what we done. I compromised every moral value, every piece of integrity I got in me. I sold it for another drink or to be a part of I compromised it all. And so as I go back and I say, hey, what I do when I hurt somebody, when I violate my integrity and my conscience and the things that are within me that I value as immoral, and I do something to compromise those for whatever reason, what I'm actually doing is I'm giving you a piece of myself and I don't even know it. And so when I go say I'm wrong, I get a piece of myself back. Does that make sense? And there's some good, we talked about this, I talked about it with a guy like in your nightly review. If your car's driving and your alignment's off, you're always pulling to the right, you got to turn the steering wheel to the left so you can go straight, right? You guys know what it's like to have a bad alignment. Most people do. And so if I'm doing my inventory at night and I'm doing my nightly review and all I'm coming up with bad stuff and then I start thinking bad about myself, the big book is pretty clear about we don't drift into morbid reflection. But if you're not thinking about if anything constructive in your life, you're going to get off alignment and you're going to think bad about yourself and it's going to start affecting your relationships. And so at the bottom of your nightly review, you can write a couple of things that you did worthwhile in the day. I took a call from so-and-so. I helped the old lady at the Circle K. Whatever you can think of to try to add that. And then if there's particular areas in your life where you've legitimately hurt yourself, by all means, you should be able to, at this point in our sobriety, we should be able to look ourselves in the mirror and be happy with who we see. You see, that's a big deal, folks. Most of us, I remember making myself look myself in the mirror, and it was hard to look myself in the eye. And so I should be able to, through practicing these principles and maybe doing some things to take care of myself, be able to look myself in the eye in the mirror and be happy with what I see. And for alcoholics, where the term pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization is more of we get that better than we get self-confidence. We get this incomprehensible demoralization, this I'm not worth a damn thing. We can understand that and there's something innately wrong with me. Then it's easier for me to go there than it is for me to say, man, I like me. I love me. And so I found that happens in direct proportion to my relationship with God, and my relationship with God is in direct proportion to my steps 2 through 12. If I'm staying current. There's other things that we can do. There's other literature out there that can help with those kind of things. When I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I hated myself. And I prayed about it, and I prayed a prayer that God, you're gonna gotta be my mom and my dad. Because I didn't have either. And I started reading the Psalm every day. And I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't want to get too far away. But that Psalm says this, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that God knows my thoughts from afar, and that he knit me together in my mother's womb. It seems crazy to me that that could even be written anywhere. But I read it every single day until I started to believe it. And once I knew that God loved me and that I was really what he said I was, it didn't matter to me so much of what you thought of me anymore. You see? Because I got my esteem from doing esteemable things, and I got my identity from the creator of me. Does that make sense? And so I promise as you go about making your amends, you will gain a piece of yourself back. And so when we say this thimble to the ocean, how much water, how much God do you want? If you take your flashlights out and you look through your life and look for these little subtle things and these different things, and you look around the relationships and look for the ones that they don't even know you did them wrong, and you get them all on there, you get more whole and you get more whole and you get more whole. And the big book says we're launched into the fourth dimension of existence. And when you do these things, here's what I know about myself, and Aaron will tell you, there's only 7 days in a week. You get sent out to do stuff. You get sent out to go share a meeting somewhere. You get to go do the talk somewhere. You get to do the workshop, or you might end up at a juvenile prison, or you might end up at children's services. You might end up doing God knows what he have you do, but you can't do it. The preparation is, the opportunity is there, but you're not prepared for it because you didn't do this. And God really does have big plans for you, more than you could dream or imagine. Through this 12-step, helping other alcoholics who are hopeless and dying is an amazing way of life. And when you get to do it in different cool ways, you'll be able to do it in ways that you can't dream or imagine. And God has something in store for you. I guarantee for everybody in this room, more than they could dream or imagine, because I know he has things in store for me that I can't dream or imagine, that I could talk about that I never dreamed or imagined, and it's always becoming new. And so, what do I do? And I was talking to my little girl about that. You know what Maya said to me? She said to Dad, everywhere I go, Giant Eagle, Walmart, Home Depot, to the meeting, everybody says, you're Mike Blower's girl. And she said, I don't mean no offense by that, but I want to be my own person. And she said, how did you do that? And I said, surrender. I just keep surrendering. I keep surrendering. Oh, I got to do some more work? Okay. I feel like God's leading me in this way, but I'm not equipped to do it. Well, I try to get equipped to do what I think that God's calling me to do. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. Big book says, not being still inexperienced, we might pay for this presumption, all kinds of certain actions and ideas. And so I've paid for it, but I've learned and I've gotten better with it. And so the answer I had was surrender. Surrender to what? Surrender this. Making my amends. Looking around my relationships. Looking for the subtleties. None of us are perfect. You're not going to be perfect. There's no place where we're going to attain perfection. It's not going to happen. But if we keep doing this, the cool thing about not being perfect is that's what's most relatable to other people. If you walked in this bitch perfect, glowing with the halo and some wings, I'd be trying to get away from you. Right? I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I don't understand that. But if you came in here and you're regular or you had some things going on, I relate to that. I'm attracted to that. Where people would say, you are a beautiful imperfection. Your imperfections are what make us beautiful. So you're not going to attain perfection, but you can be imperfect and be sent out. And you can see that God can use your defects of character to be helpful to other people, which is completely contrary. Right? Any questions? Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. How do we make amends with people that either are no longer alive, and then if
That's a good one.
have court orders in place where you're not allowed to talk to them or contact them in any way?
Those are good. That's a good one. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me tell you, when I prayed the prayer, I don't know how, 8 years sober maybe, when I prayed 7 years sober, I started praying that prayer, God, please show me what my unfinished amends has to do with me taking a drink. I heard it from somebody else on the speaker tape. And I said, don't pray this unless you're real serious. And I got to praying it, and all these weird things started coming up. And one of the things that came up was my grandparents. And my mom was a wild alcoholic, and she did crazy things. So consequently, my grandparents had to intervene all the time. And then as I started getting, selfish and self-centered, and my self-will started running right, and I did the things that we do, then I stepped on the toes of my grandparents. And I did things to them that was very hurtful. And so when I went out and made amends, they didn't make it on my 4-step list, and I didn't think of them in my 8-step. I didn't think of them at all. I don't know why. But I couldn't get them. I had nightmares, and I couldn't get out of my head. So I went to my grandparents' grave. And I prayed the prayer, and it was a sunny day, and I cleaned it off a little bit, and I acted as if they were right there with me. And let me tell you how that worked out. My grandfather was like my father. I didn't have a father. My father was in the penitentiary, and my mom had different biker dudes, and they were all scumbag dudes or whatever, and sometimes I got close to them, but most of the time I got let down. And so the person who was pretty constant was my grandfather. He taught me how to play football and catch a ball and shoot and how to go fishing. So he was the man in my life that stayed constant. And he had fishing stuff. He had boats and tackle and tools and all kinds of cool stuff. And when he always used to say to me, which, when you're young, you don't really think of it. He said, when I pass away, this is all your stuff. You don't think of that. But then he passed away. And nobody in my family trusted me with a damn nickel. Right? They didn't trust me with a single thing. And so the right thing to do was you can't give that to him. He's going to sell it or whatever he's going to do. And so I just ignored it. I went to my grandparents' grave, and I prayed the prayer, and I told them all the things I had done. I had people in your house when you weren't home. My grandfather was a mechanic, a lifetime mechanic at PIE. And when he was 20 or 30 years on the job, they gave him a set of golden wrenches. I stole them. I stole from my grandmother, and she tried to look out for us because she knew my mom was crazy. And so she would say, you got to stay away from your mom because your mom's just going to keep letting you down. And blah, blah, blah. And she always looked out. And you know what I did? Like a good alcoholic, I took complete advantage of both of them. And they passed away, and when I was on a binge, and I didn't even go to my grandmother's funeral. So I went to the grave, and I told them all the things I had done. And I asked the question, is there anything that I left out? And I just sat there. Is there anything I left out? And then I said, I acted as if they were there. What can I do to make it right? And then I got an intuition. You know what my intuition was? Look after our kids. Too selfish to hear that. And so what I said, they're supposed to be looking out for me. I'm the grandkid. I swear to God, that was my first thought. And I said, well, maybe I'm just tripping. What would you have me do to make this right? And I got it again. Look after our kids, which would be my aunt and my uncle and my mother. That's their kids. And so I left out of there, and I started calling those people that I hadn't talked to in years, my aunt and my uncle, and I didn't really tell them why. I just gave them a little hint. I just said, I want to just call you up. I just want to be, if there's anything I can do to help you. And the next day, I did that. It was weird. The next day, I was going to a job, and I was in between. I remember I was going through North Hill, and my Aunt Stacy called me and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm on my way to a job. And she said, can you come over? I just told my grandparents I'd do anything I could to make it right with them, and they told me I'm supposed to, this is gravesite, so I don't know if I'm tripping or not. She said, can you come over? And I said, shit, okay, yeah, I'll come over. So I went over to my Aunt Stacy's. And since the day before when I made that call, something was inspired in her, and she took me out to the garage and said, here you go. And I said, huh. And it was all the things my grandfather promised me. What's the explanation for that? The explanation is that my grandparents heard my amends. And I was able to amend that relationship by taking the actions that I felt inspired to do. And the relationship was amended, and I got the things that my grandfather promised me all his life. It's a miracle. It's a very powerful, powerful program. And so the ones like that, you pray for the willingness. You got protection orders or whatever, I don't know. You pray about that stuff, and God makes a way. If you're willing, God will make a way. David?
I lived out west, and you can steal up to $1,000 and not be prosecuted, and I was doing that for years because I love living in a liberal city. Get that money back, and how do I make that back?
Well, here I don't know what that's like to only be going to jail for things that are worth over $1,000.
I mean, you can steal literally thousands of dollars and not get because there weren't any cops out there. Too.
Well, that my comment is neither doesn't really matter. You're responsible. Yeah, we are responsible. Yes. So I talked to a guy last night. He called me about making his amends. He said he owed $400 for a windshield or something like that. He said the guy told him not to pay him, and I said, pay the money back. They told me not to. So what? Pay it back to them anyway. You know what I mean? You owe them the money, to pay them the money. Pay the money back, folks. That's a big one. Pay the money back. It's not your money anyway. You want to see your finances get better? Pay the money back. You want to get some financial security? You want to go to the next level in your life? Pay the money back. You pay the money back, your finances will explode. I promise you. Yes, ma'am? Yeah, God, you got sponsors. Use your sponsors. There's ways of making these things right, folks. Let me ask you these questions, then we're going to wrap up with this. These are maybe some obstacles in the way of some of your amends making. Are there resentments in the way of your willingness to make amends? You don't have to answer. Just think about it. I want you to consider it. Are there resentments in the way of your willingness to make amends? Are you hesitating in any way before working on the 8th step? Why? Let me read it again. Are you hesitating in any way before working on the 8th step? Why? Why is it valuable to determine the exact nature of your wrongs? In making these amends, folks, you'll start to see behaviors and patterns that you do. You don't want to miss out on the opportunity to grow in this way. I'm telling you, you'll be able to see things that especially of the amends that most people in here are sober. You'll do things that people sober, I promise you. You'll see some different patterns. Why is it so essential that you are very clear about your responsibility? You guys understand that? And so if resentment is the number one offender and from it stem all form of spiritual disease and it kills more alcoholics than anything else, if you're not an alcoholic, resentment is just as powerful. You just don't drink over it, but it's still damn deadly. And so it's my responsibility, if I have hurt you and you have a resentment against me and I have an opportunity to come to you and make an amend, it is my responsibility to be as honest as I possibly can so to create a big enough door that that person can forgive me so they can get that resentment off of them. Do you guys understand that? We got to give people that opportunity because we're responsible for that. Why is simply saying I'm sorry alone not sufficient to repair the damage that you've caused? Meaning the big book would say a meager mumbling that I'm sorry will not fill the bill. Why is only changing your behavior not sufficient to repair the damage you've caused? Do you have amends to make that are financial and therefore you do not want to make them? I'm a good alcoholic, and so if I know I owe some money somewhere, I'm not putting them on my list. Right? Can you imagine what your life would be like if you had already made these amends? And last but not least, do you have amends to people who have also harmed you? Those are some things to consider when you're making your list. Any questions? All right, let's pray it out. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Yeah. Oh, this damn thing. I just yeah it all on it.
Yeah.